I was digging through my wife's purse that morning, just trying to find her car keys so I could move her car and get mine out of the garage to head to work. What I didn't expect was the black hole that was her bag. Honestly, it had everything in there but a stun gun and maybe even that too. But nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for what I actually found buried under all that chaos. An unopened box of pregnancy protection, brand new, sitting in my wife's purse like it belonged there. I had to sit down right then and there before I passed out. The world tilted for a second. My first thought was, why the hell is this in my wife's purse? I mean, maybe there's some totally rational explanation, but at that moment, my brain couldn't find one. The kids, Andy and Gracie, were making their usual morning noise zipping up backpacks, arguing over who got the last toaster waffle, and Laura was floating around the kitchen like she didn't just drop a nuclear bomb into my morning. Then she saw me, sitting there frozen, holding that damn box in my hand. She paused for a beat, just a beat walked over, took it from me without saying a word, dropped it back in her purse, kissed me on the cheek, and with a syrupy sweet, "Have a nice day, sweetie. Don't forget you're grilling tonight," walked right out the door like nothing had happened. I think Andy said something like, "We're ready to go, Dad," as they piled into the garage. I don't remember the drive to school. I don't remember pulling out of the driveway. I don't remember anything. Somehow, I didn't crash the car or forget a kid, but it was all just blank. Even walking into the office was a blur. I think someone said good morning. I think I nodded back, but I couldn't place faces or names or why I was even there. I sat in my tiny office, staring out the window, trying to make sense of what had just happened in my kitchen. Had I imagined it? Dreamed it? Did it even happen? Why did Laura have that in her bag? My mind spiraled fast. Affair. Another man. Was she planning to leave? Was she going to take my kids and disappear? My chest tightened, breath shortening with every new horror scenario. I had to lower my head between my knees just to keep from passing out. Eventually, someone popped their head into my office and asked if I was going downstairs for coffee. I said yes, just to break the spiral. The day didn't improve. When I got home, I knew I looked like I just walked away from a 10-car pileup. Pale, jittery, legs like rubber. And the tightness in my chest, still there. The kids were perched at the island doing what passed for homework, and Laura was in the kitchen like June Cleaver, flipping through her cookbook or whatever. She glanced up, smiled, kissed me on the lips like nothing had happened, and said, "Don't forget, you're grilling the hamburgers." What was I supposed to do? I said nothing, just nodded and went to the bedroom to change. And the wild part? I fully expected to find another man in there. That's how deep in my head I was. I checked the closet, even peeked behind the shower curtain. Nothing. Of course nothing. But my mind was off the rails. I stood under the hot shower, thinking about every detail I could, every fight, every late night, every excuse. Still, there was no actual proof. No affair, no confession, just a box. A box that made my stomach drop. I had nothing but paranoia. Maybe there was a perfectly good reason she had it. I had to give her the chance to tell me when she was ready. If she was going to come clean, I needed to wait, as hard as that might be. When Gracie asked where I had been all weekend, I paused for a second, then told her I was helping a friend. She looked at me, nodded with the quiet seriousness only kids can carry, and walked out of the room. And just like that, the lie was sealed. Later that evening, after dinner, I put the kids to bed. Andy fell asleep easily, but Gracie asked again if I'd be around next weekend. I kissed her on the forehead and told her I'd be home. I don't even know why I said it. I wasn't sure of anything anymore. Meanwhile, Rob had gone silent. He didn't talk to me, didn't acknowledge me, barely looked at me. He had that tight-lipped expression, the one he gets when he's trying to keep himself from exploding. When I came back downstairs, I found him moving things around again. At first, I assumed he was doing something for himself, maybe reorganizing. But then I followed him to the bedroom and my stomach sank. All my clothes, very last thing was on the guest bed again. He'd moved my dresser, my things, my space, like I no longer belonged. I stood in the hallway, wanting to say something, but he looked at me with this flat stare and said, "Don't." I wanted to scream. I wanted to beg, but I just walked away and shut the guest room door behind me. He wasn't playing around anymore. The message was clear. You made your choice. Now live with it. Rob. After I put the kids to bed, I went back to the bedroom and continued the ritual. I'd done this once already, but I didn't care I was doing it again. I grabbed Laura's clothes from the closet, tossed them onto the guest room bed. I didn't fold a damn thing. I dumped her toiletries into a plastic bin and moved her dresser. That took some effort, but I managed. Then I closed the master bedroom door behind me like slamming a chapter shut. I remembered Jordan's words. Don't push too hard, but make sure she understands this has consequences. She thinks I'm just angry. She has no idea how ready I am. No idea how patient I've become and how cold. I'm done sharing a bed with someone who shares herself with another man. If I'm not good enough for her, then she can live somewhere else. She can have her boyfriend, but she doesn't get to have me. Laura. At work the next day, I couldn't focus. I'm an engineer. I'm supposed to be able to problem solve, but all I could think about was how Rob had pushed me out. Again. I thought he was just trying to scare me. Maybe I thought if I pushed him far enough, he'd fight for me. But now I wasn't so sure. What if I'd gone too far? I tried to go into the bedroom to talk, to explain, to plead, but he didn't even open the door. Go away, he said through it. No yelling, no anger, just ice. That's when I realized I had a serious problem. I went back to the guest room, sat down on the bed, and tried to figure out my next move. How do I fix this? Is there even a way back? Rob. I sat in my office, the door closed, just thinking. I'm an engineer too, and when something's broken, I fix it. But what if the thing that's broken is beyond repair? My brain wouldn't stop spinning. Did I push her into someone else's arms? Was there something I didn't see? What did I do wrong? I didn't have answers. Only questions and a steady rage that I had to choke down every time I saw her. Eventually, I did what I always do. I wrote. I opened a notebook, wrote every single thing I could remember. Every missed school event she didn't show up to. Every weekend she was busy. Every time she came home late, I cataloged it, all timestamps, dates, the whole thing. It made me feel like I had some control. Jordan told me to document everything. You want your kids? He said. You better show the court she put herself first. And I am. I will. I also wrote down every gift I ever gave her, every vacation I planned, every time I stayed up helping with the kids when they were sick. I wanted a full record. Because when this thing goes nuclear, and it will, I'm not coming in unarmed. Laura. A few weeks later, I told Rob I'd be gone again that weekend. I didn't lie this time. I just said it. He looked at me like I was something he stepped in. Didn't even argue. Didn't say a word. I kept hoping he'd get jealous enough to snap and come after me. Fight for me. But he didn't. He just let me go. Lately, I've been with Trey more and more. Weekends, weeknights, dinners, dancing. The sex is unbelievable, but it's starting to wear me out. Some of my friends asked me what I do with the kids when I'm gone. I told them Rob handles it. One of them even asked for his number, said her boyfriend didn't measure up, and she wanted someone who did. I didn't give her the number. That's still my Rob. But even I know this can't go on forever. I keep telling myself that one day I'll be done with Trey, that I'll go back and Rob will take me back. I'm still his wife. I'm still the mother of his children. That has to count for something, doesn't it? Rob. Jordan says we're getting close. All the documentation I've gathered, the consistency, the pattern, it's all going to help when we get to court. She thinks she can dance between two lives forever, but I've seen enough to know who she is now. And soon, a judge will too. I had thought it over for months, and now it was time. Time to stop pretending that what Laura and I had was still a marriage, or even a relationship. I loved her once, God. I would have taken a bullet for her, but that woman doesn't exist anymore. The one standing in her place now, she made her choice long ago. So I called Jordan and told him to prepare the paperwork and arrange for it to be served. No more waiting. No more hoping she'd come to her senses. I chose Sunday evening after she came back from another weekend with her boyfriend. The kids were already asleep. I grabbed myself a beer and poured a glass of wine for Laura. When I handed it to her, she looked at it like I'd just handed her a poisoned chalice. "Laura, we need to talk," I said. Her response was a smirk and a dry, "What do you want to talk about? We barely talk anymore." "Well, now we will. About us. About our marriage. You do remember that, right?" I asked. She looked frozen, like a deer in the headlights. She took a long, slow sip of wine. "You've made it very clear what your priorities are," I continued. "I'm not one of them. Neither are the kids. So I'm doing the only thing that makes sense, ending this farce and moving on." She didn't say a word. Not a protest, not a tear. Just silence. "You need to stay home tomorrow morning," I said. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "There will be a person coming by to deliver some documents," I said. "It's a formal declaration of divorce. I don't want to be your husband anymore." Still, nothing. She just sat there, wine glass in hand, not even blinking. "You've spent over a year and a half in bed with Trayvon Williams," I said, "and that tells me all I need to know. You don't want to be my wife. You sure as hell don't want to be a mother to Andy and Gracie. You want out? Well, here it is. Clean, formal, and final." Laura tried to speak, but I cut her off. I had no interest in hearing lies or pathetic half-truths. "Yes, I want you to move out. That's what happens in a divorce," I said. "You can shack up with Trey full-time if you want. The kids and I will live our lives without having to think about you." "Why?" she whispered, like she couldn't believe I was serious. "Why are you doing this?" "Why?" I laughed bitterly. "Are you completely stupid? You've been sneaking around with your boyfriend for months, and you don't know why your husband wants a divorce? Figure it out." Jordan had told me not to shout, so I didn't. I just took another sip of my beer and kept my tone flat, cold. "The house will be put up for sale. All assets will be divided equally. I'll have full custody of Andy and Gracie. You will pay child support and contribute to their education fund. That's non-negotiable. Take any furniture you want except the kids' stuff. It's all detailed in the documents. There's a business card inside. Your lawyer can contact mine. I don't want any more conversation. You've been making your priorities pretty clear for months, Laura. Now I'm making mine." I got up and left the kitchen. Laura stayed seated, eyes locked on the wine glass like it might give her an answer I couldn't. Laura. That night, Rob dropped the kids off at school, and I stayed in the kitchen, waiting. I had called into work and said I needed a personal day. I knew what was coming. When the doorbell rang at exactly 9 a.m., I opened it to find a woman standing there, athletic build, wearing a blazer over jeans and holding a large envelope. "Laura Brady?" "Yes." "Mrs. Paul Brady. May I see your ID to confirm?" I sighed, walked over to my purse, pulled out my license, and handed it over. She photographed it, handed it back, and gave me the envelope. "You've been served." She stepped back, took a photo of me holding it, and walked away without another word. I stood there for a moment with the door still open, like if I waited long enough, the envelope would dissolve in my hands. It didn't. I closed the door slowly and went back to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and sat down. I stared at that envelope for a long time. It was the price of every moment I thought I could compartmentalize my life. The cost of believing I could have Trey and still keep my family. Was it worth it? 10 minutes later, Jordan's office called Rob to confirm delivery. I imagine he just nodded and said, "Thank you." I took another sip of water and finally pulled the envelope open. I told Jordan's office thanks, but there was no need to send the photo. I didn't need visual proof. I already knew this was real. It was the first day of what I'd come to call my new life. And while part of me wanted to feel liberated, I mostly just felt tired. That's the word. Not angry, not heartbroken anymore, just tired. Around 3 p.m., I called the bank where Laura worked. The receptionist told me she had taken the day off. I figured she'd be stewing in the fallout of the documents by now, but I didn't want to stew. I wanted to look someone in the eyes, so I got in my car and drove down to the bank. Not to see her. I was there for Trayvon. I found his car in the parking lot and parked a few feet away. Then I got out, walked over, and sat on the hood of his BMW, crossed my arms, waited. Sure enough, at about 5:15, he came strolling out of the building. He saw me, stopped. I could see the gears turning in his head, trying to decide if he should keep walking toward his car or turn around and disappear. He was about 3 inches taller than me and probably 20 pounds heavier, built like a swimmer. But the way he slowed down said everything. He was scared. He came closer, cautiously. "You must be Trayvon Williams," I said, keeping my voice flat. "Who's asking?" he said, trying for bravado but already on his heels. "My name is Robert Brady. I'm Laura Brady's husband," I said. Or, well, I was. His eyes darted. "What do you want?" "I came to tell you something simple. You've won. She's yours now. All yours." He blinked. "What? What the hell are you talking about?" "You wanted her. You got her," I said. "She wants you instead of me, and now she's free to have you full time. That's what I'm talking about." "Dude," he said, clearly uncomfortable. I don't want a woman on a permanent basis. Yeah, I liked being with her, she's nice and all, but I'm not looking for a serious relationship." I tilted my head, genuinely curious now. "Come again?" "I mean," he hesitated. "She's cool, but I'm not trying to have someone move in or anything." That hit like a brick. He wasn't just sleeping with her, he had no intentions of being with her beyond the sex. And Laura had risked her entire family, our marriage, and our kids for this. "She told me you two were exclusive," I said, eyeing him. Trayvon's face shifted, some guilt, some discomfort. That was all I needed. I stood up from the hood of his shiny car and gave him a grin I didn't feel. "Well, Trayvon, I hope you've got some closet space. She's going to need it." I chuckled bitterly, turned, and walked to my Subaru. The drive home was slow. I was giving her time, I guess, to make the next move. She didn't. When I walked in, Andy and Gracie were at the table, heads down, doing homework. "Where's Mom?" I asked. Gracie looked up. "I think she's upstairs." "Thanks, sweetheart," I said, then headed up to change. As I passed by the guest room, I could hear Laura inside, softly blowing her nose. I didn't stop. I didn't speak. I just grabbed a clean shirt and went back to the kitchen. A few minutes later, I heard the front door close and the sound of her car pulling out of the driveway. "She must have gone to help that friend again," I said dryly to the kids. They just shrugged and kept working. Laura." I couldn't get a response from Trey all day. He'd been avoiding my messages ever since I got served. So I drove to his apartment. He let me in, but the look he gave me said everything. "What are you doing here?" he asked, opening a beer from his fridge. Rob filed for divorce," I said. "He named you in the papers for infidelity." Trey stared at me for a second and just said, "What the hell?" Then turned and walked into his living room. "What do you want me to do about it?" he asked. I didn't know what to say. "Your husband came to see me, you know," Trey added, looking irritated. "Said he was kicking you out. Asked if I had space in my closet. I didn't even know what to tell him." I stared at him. "So what are we? Am I your girlfriend? You introduced me to your friends like I was." "Laura," he interrupted. "We had fun. That's all. I'm not trying to be anyone's husband." I felt my stomach drop. "I'm sorry," he added. "I just don't want that. You knew that." I stood up. "Thanks for nothing." 2 weeks later, Jordan called me with an update. He was in regular contact with Laura's lawyer. Apparently, her attorney, some icy shark in a designer skirt, suggested they try family court mediation and counseling as a tactic. Laura wanted us to go to counseling. Said she had a mental health episode, that it was all a big misunderstanding. What a joke. Now she wanted therapy. Now she wanted to call it a misunderstanding. She hadn't misunderstood anything for the past 18 months, and now it was too late. I wasn't exactly sure what kind of mental health episode Laura planned to claim, but Jordan had a pretty good guess. He suspected she'd go with depression, that old, familiar umbrella, and frame it as a deep emotional void that pushed her toward Trayvon. According to the anticipated narrative, when she didn't feel wanted at home, and this charming young man gave her attention, she gave in. Trayvon, of course, would be painted as the opportunistic predator, young, aggressive, probably misunderstood, and Laura the emotionally vulnerable mother just trying to feel something again. Jordan also warned me there might be some sprinkling of sex addiction in there, just for good measure. It's trendy, he joked bitterly. Worked for that golfer, right? Maybe Laura was hoping the family court would buy into the idea that this was all some kind of mental health fluke, a cry for help, a symptom, not a decision. I'm not a psychiatrist, but I could smell the strategy a mile away. It was all about tilting the sympathy in her favor. Make it sound like she broke, not that she betrayed. If they could convince the court that this was a mental health issue, and not a conscious choice, then maybe, just maybe, she could salvage custody, the house, and why not some financial support from me along the way. And so, the dance began. The judge, a gentle woman in her 60s who reminded me of someone's wise aunt, leaned into Laura's story. She granted her the benefit of the doubt. She suspended the divorce proceedings and ordered marriage counseling, along with an evaluation by a mental health professional. Until both were completed, nothing would be decided, no division of property, no custody plan, nothing. And Laura was allowed to remain in the house, in our home, with our children. Jordan had warned me this might happen. He'd seen it before, and he laid it out plainly during one of our strategy meetings. It's not about fairness, he said. It's about optics, about who sounds more fragile and who sounds more aggressive. For now, play the long game. So we did. Instead of courtrooms, we sat around conference tables. Instead of fighting, I nodded and took notes. And when we walked out, Jordan pulled me aside in the hallway and said what he always did. Do nothing. Go through the motions. Let her show her hand. Stay calm, and it'll come around. 4 months later, I had 12 marriage counseling sessions under my belt. 12. That's about 12 hours of having my emotions dissected, reframed, and reassembled like some kind of psychological IKEA project. The therapist, Dr. Day Snow, a name that honestly fit her pale hair and frostbitten tone, was another older woman with years of experience. She was poised, educated, and had the calming voice of someone who spent a lifetime talking couples off the ledge. But I saw through it. I saw how gently and subtly she leaned into Laura's version of the story. How, with every session, she tried to nudge the narrative toward my supposed emotional neglect, my inability to meet Laura's intimacy needs, my failure to notice her slow spiral into disconnection. Somehow, Laura's 18-month affair had become a reflection of my shortcomings as a husband. I wasn't attentive enough, communicative enough, emotionally available enough. It was impressive, really, how delicately the blame shifted. So I took notes, detailed, exhaustive notes, and handed them over to Jordan. We knew what we were doing. If Dr. Snow ever testified, we wanted a record of what had really been said, not just her interpretation of it. One session, I'd had enough of the veiled suggestions. I brought it up directly. What defines a modern marriage in the 21st century? I asked. Is the promise to be exclusive still part of it? Or is that outdated? Dr. Snow visibly squirmed in her chair. Well, she said cautiously, some couples agree on different definitions of fidelity, open marriages, consensual arrangements. But, I interrupted, if one partner is hiding the fact that they're having sex with someone else, that's not an open marriage. That's cheating, right? She hesitated, tried to redirect. Part of marriage counseling is about restoring balance. No, I said. I'm asking, is hidden infidelity acceptable? Yes or no? She looked down at her notes and then up at the clock. We're out of time for today, she said. Why don't you both think about trust, and next week we can discuss how to rebuild it. Trust, right. Meanwhile, Laura was running out of wiggle room. The mental health episode wasn't sticking the way her attorney had hoped. Her psychologist, someone not affiliated with Dr. Snow, filed a report stating plainly that Laura was of sound mind and fully aware of her decisions. There were no clinical markers of any disorder, no crisis, no diagnosis to hide behind. In other words, she'd cheated because she wanted to. She didn't need therapy. She needed consequences. And yet, even as that temporary reprieve dissolved, even as the court began preparing for real decisions, I could see Laura still clinging to the hope that it would all be forgiven, that I'd change my mind, that we could go back to how things were. But I wasn't moving. Not this time. I finally had to admit it to myself, in plain terms. What I had done wasn't some reaction to trauma or breakdown. I didn't cheat because I was suffering from depression or spiraling from some undiagnosed mental disorder. I did it because I wanted to, because it felt good, because I could. The therapist's report made that brutally clear, too. It stated in no uncertain terms that my actions were based on personal choices, selfish choices, not rooted in any clinical issue. I hadn't lost my mind. I'd just lost my judgment. And now I was facing the price of that truth. Meanwhile, Rob and his lawyer Jordan were moving forward, preparing to finally bring the custody issue to court. Everything up until now had been a slow burn: counseling, mediation, delays. But now, we were here, in front of the family judge, and Jordan was ready. His whole strategy centered on proving that Rob was the more stable, consistent, responsible parent. My lawyer still seemed convinced we could paint what I did as a mistake driven by unmet emotional needs, that somehow I could recover from the damage. The judge, a composed and sharp-eyed woman in her late 60s, invited us into a conference room for the hearing no courtroom drama. Just calm deliberation. Rob looked calm, focused. I could tell he'd rehearsed this with Jordan a dozen times. I, on the other hand, was already sweating through my blouse before it even began. First, they called Dr. Snow, our marriage counselor, to provide a summary of the 12 sessions we'd endured together. I already knew this wasn't going to help me. I watched as Jordan stood and asked her to describe her findings. She said something vague about emotional withholding and how my reluctance to share made it difficult to uncover the true root causes of our marital problems. Jordan didn't miss a beat. Dr. Snow, did my client's wife ever tell you why she felt the need to pursue a sexual relationship outside of her marriage? Dr. Snow, to her creditor, maybe her detriment, tried to be thoughtful. Well, human needs are very complex. People thrive in different ways. In Laura's case, it appears her need for intimacy and self-actualization led her to have sex with another man? Jordan interrupted. She did say she found emotional and physical fulfillment with Mr. Williams. Yes. Jordan tilted his head slightly. So, Laura's journey to self-actualization included a long-term affair with another man while still married to her husband and raising 2 children? Dr. Snow hesitated. It's more complicated than that. Jordan glanced at the judge, then back at the therapist. Of course it is. Let me simplify it. Did Laura Brady tell her husband at any point early on that she needed emotional or physical intimacy that she wasn't receiving from him? No, not directly. So, instead of having that conversation, she began a relationship with another man and hid it from her husband for over a year? Yes, I believe so. And you believe this path, this secret relationship, was her way of realizing her full potential as a person? I didn't say that exactly. But that is the basis of what you're implying. That infidelity, when reframed as emotional growth, is acceptable? No, I didn't mean to suggest. Jordan cut her off gently, but firmly. Dr. Snow, does Laura Brady's decision to hide this relationship demonstrate respect for her husband? Dr. Snow looked visibly uncomfortable. Well, I suppose it could be interpreted as a lack of respect, yes. Noted. No further questions, Your Honor. The judge looked to my lawyer. Any questions for the witness? There were none. Dr. Snow stood up quickly, gathered her things with trembling hands, and made a hasty exit. The The door clicked shut behind her, leaving a silence in the room that buzzed with judgment. All I could do was sit there, staring at the tabletop, knowing exactly what everyone else in that room was thinking, and realizing that for the first time since this all began, there was no angle, no defense, no clever excuse that could make this look like anything other than what it was: betrayal. And not just of Rob, it of our kids, of myself, of the life I had claimed to value. All the months I'd spent trying to spin it, justify it, frame it as something else, it had all just crumbled in one short testimony. Jordan hadn't needed to raise his voice. He hadn't had to call me names. He just held a mirror to my decisions and let the reflection speak for itself. All I wanted was for it to be over. The hearing, the cold conference rooms, the endless back and forth about who did what and who deserved what. I just wanted to go home. Not to the physical house, but to the life we had before I destroyed it. When the judge called a break, I got up with one goal in mind: talk to Rob. I was going to swallow my pride, beg if I had to. I wanted to stop this spiral before it became irreversible. I wanted my kids back. I wanted to be a family again. I knew now that what I had with Trey, no matter how exciting it once felt, was a mistake, a distraction, a fantasy that was never going to last. He and I had no future, not when the cost of keeping him meant losing everything else. Even my mother, who had never been one to sugarcoat things, had told me again and again, "You've been a fool, Laura. If you want to fix this, get on your knees and fight for it." But when we returned from the break, the courtroom felt colder. Rob's lawyer came in like a machine, placing one document after another in front of the judge, a log of every single weekend I spent with Trey. Every school recital, every parent-teacher meeting, every birthday party or soccer game I'd missed. It was all there, in black and white. A comparison between Rob's presence and Minnie, and I came out looking like someone who had simply opted out of motherhood. My own lawyer did what she could. She tried to argue that, yes, I'd made some terrible choices, but that I was still a loving, involved mother, that the kids needed me in their lives. She tried to soften the facts, to suggest that my time with Trey didn't erase the years of being a full-time mom. But I saw the judge's face. I saw the disappointment in her eyes. It wasn't judgment, it was deeper, like a tired frustration that she'd seen this same pattern too many times before. Rob's lawyer presented their custody plan. It was detailed, calm, reasonable. Rob would remain the primary caregiver. I'd have generous visitation weekends, holidays, and shared vacations. But he would be the anchor, the one the kids would live with. When the judge asked if either side had anything further, my lawyer shook her head. There was nothing more to say. Everyone stood up. People began packing their folders and pushing in chairs. I wanted to talk to Rob, to say something but he turned and walked out with his lawyer before I could get a word in. We still lived under the same roof, which meant I'd have another chance. Or at least, that's what I told myself. That night, Rob picked up the kids and took them out to dinner. He didn't say a word about the hearing. I didn't even know if the kids asked where I was. He had a way of protecting them from the ugliness, something I'd failed to do over and over again. I assumed he thought I'd gone crying to Trey, but that bridge had burned too. Trey wasn't picking up. He hadn't responded to my last few messages. Maybe he realized I had too much baggage, or maybe he never cared as much as I wanted to believe. I wasn't ready to give up, but I could feel the window closing. I just wanted the judge to let us move forward. No more delays. No more pretending. 2 weeks later, we were back in family court. Jordan sat beside Rob, calm and collected. I sat beside my lawyer, trying to steady my nerves. The judge addressed the room, thanking us for our patience and cooperation over the previous weeks. I barely registered the words until my lawyer nudged me, whispering that I should pay attention. The judge began reading the terms of the final decision. I was bracing myself for the worst, but what I heard hit harder than I expected. Rob would retain full custody. We'd sell the house, and he'd be allowed to stay in it with the children until it's sold. I would contribute a monthly amount to the kids' educational savings and pay modest child support. My visitation rights were generous, but they came with the unspoken understanding that I'd no longer be the parent they came home to every day. And I had 30 days to find a new place to live. That was it. That was the sound of my life breaking in half. The divorce would be finalized at the end of the 30-day period. Until then, all the logistics would begin shifting in place. Rob stood up and turned to Jordan, shaking his hand firmly. Then, to my surprise, he walked over to me. "We need to tell the kids together," he said quietly. "About you moving out. When can you do that?" I looked down at the floor, suddenly unable to hold his gaze. "This weekend," I whispered. He nodded once, then turned and walked out of the room. There was no rage in him, no satisfaction either, just the calm resolve of someone who had finally finished something painful. I sat there, still holding my breath, wondering how I could possibly explain to my children that I was no longer part of their everyday world, wondering how I'd ever explain any of this at all. I left it at that and went home. Laura pulled into the driveway about 5 minutes after I walked through the door. For the first time in what felt like forever, we sat at the kitchen table, actually looking at each other. The silence between us wasn't angry. It was just empty. "So," I said, breaking the quiet, "how do you want to tell the kids that their mom's going to be living somewhere else?" I looked at her without blinking. "And are you planning to move in with Trayvon Williams?" Her head snapped up like I'd slapped her. "No," she said quickly, her voice firm. "No, Trey, have you thought about where you're going to live instead? What kind of place, house, apartment, rental?" She let out a long breath. "No, not really. I guess I need to start looking." We sat in silence for a while. She looked like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Eventually, she asked, "Rob, is there any way at all you could forgive me for being so stupid? For what I've done? I'll do anything to fix this. I want our family back." I took a sip of my beer and looked at her over the rim of the glass. "Jesus, Laura, how many nights did you spend with that guy? Did you ever, even for a second, think about what this was doing to your marriage? To your kids? To me?" She stayed quiet, looking down at her hands. "You still want him, don't you? Be honest. If he let you back into his bed tonight, you'd go, wouldn't you?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. "You made your choice, and it wasn't me." I drained the rest of my beer. These IPAs are really damn good. I got up and walked to the fridge for another. "What do you think it feels like," I continued, "to realize that your wife doesn't think you're enough? That she would rather be with another man, in his bed, while you stay home raising the kids and keeping the house together?" I paused, lowering my voice. "I'm not sure there's a way back from that. You poisoned the well, Laura. You have a month to find a new place. Make it count." I left the kitchen without waiting for a response. Telling the kids was exactly as I expected. Their biggest concern was whether they'd have to move. "No," I said calmly. "You're staying right here." They turned to Laura, who told them gently that she would be moving out, but they'd have a room at her new place and could visit whenever they wanted. They both turned to look at me again, like they were checking to see if it was really true. I nodded. Gracie looked at Andy, then back at me. "So we don't have to change schools?" "Nope," I said. "Everything stays the same for you." You could see the relief on their faces. That was all they needed to hear. After that, they went back to their usual banter and laughter. Kids are resilient. Thank God for that. Laura started looking for an apartment. She said she wanted to find something closer to her office to save on commute and parking. I offered her any furniture from the house she wanted. She took a few things. Meanwhile, I began removing everything from the house that reminded me of us. All our old couple photos gone. The big wedding photo that used to hang in the family room taken down and boxed up. Every symbol of a marriage that no longer existed. I didn't know where she put them. I didn't ask. Trey was avoiding her at work now. I guess he'd moved on. She was yesterday's news, and I could see it in her face. She missed the feeling of being wanted. And now, she had neither of us. Not him, not me. She told me she missed my touch, Missed sleeping next to me. Said she used to feel safe in my arms. I didn't respond. She found a 2-bedroom apartment 4 blocks from the bank. The problem was, it wouldn't be ready until after the divorce was finalized. That gave her less than a month in the house, and she knew she had to find a way to stall. That night, I was sitting on the edge of the bed reading when I heard a soft knock on the door. "Rob, can I come in?" "What do you need?" The door creaked open. I looked up. It was Laura. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her, and in one motion, she pulled off her t-shirt and shorts. She stood there naked, saying nothing, just watching me. 2 thoughts hit me at the same time. The first, this was too late. Way too late. She should have done this long ago, back when I still felt like her husband, back before she chose Trey over me and our kids. This wasn't about love. This was about her fear. Fear of being alone, of having no one to hold her, of facing the consequences. The second thought, she still looked beautiful, and I knew I'd miss this. Miss the version of us that used to mean something. Miss the simple intimacy of lying beside someone you trusted. But I wasn't that man anymore, and she wasn't that woman. Not for me. Not now. Maybe not ever. I pushed the thought out of my mind. Whatever tenderness I used to feel for Laura, whatever flicker of hope or comfort was dead. I pulled the blanket up to my neck, rolled onto my side, and muttered, "Close the door when you leave." I didn't watch her go, but I heard her pause, standing there like she didn't know what to do. Then the faint sound of her picking up her clothes, the quiet rustle as she got dressed, and the click of the door closing behind her. Laura, it's over. Rob doesn't want me. I can't pretend anymore. I'm just damaged goods now. I gave what should have been his to someone else again and again. I chose Trey, and I chose wrong. Trey doesn't want me either. When things got complicated, he bailed, said it was too messy, too dramatic. He was clear. I don't need all this. So now I have no one. Not him, not Rob. Not the family I thought would always be there. Even work turned sour. My manager called me into her office and told me there was an opening at another branch across town. When I said I'd found an apartment nearby closer to this office, she just looked at me flatly and said, "Do you want a job or not?" Then she got up and walked out. It was clear. I had to go. So I started looking again. The new place isn't what I wanted, but it's something. Small, but enough room for Andy and Gracie when it's my time with them. And it's on the right side of town, so I won't spend hours in traffic every day. The new job's a lateral move. No promotion, no bonus bump. Nothing I'd hoped for. And worse, everyone there knows why I transferred. I see it in their glances, in the way they stop talking when I walk in. Some of the women can barely hide the disgust in their eyes. I even heard someone joke that Trey got my old office, my old job, perfect. He got the promotion. I got the shame. Rob didn't try to hide how eager he was to see me go. Every day he reminded me how many days I had left in the house. 17 days, he'd say, with a tone like he was counting down to vacation. He offered to help pack, asked which furniture I wanted, moved boxes into the garage, even labeled them. "So I don't forget what's yours," he'd say, grinning like it was a game. He told me he'd be clearing out the house after I left, redecorating, starting fresh, erasing me. Moving day. I hired 2 guys and a truck, local movers. They pulled up right at 8 a.m. Rob had taken the day off from work not for sentimental reasons, but to make sure everything went smoothly. He said it like he was hosting a yard sale. The movers were quick. I pointed to the stuff in the garage and a few things in the guest room. They were done in under an hour. Rob even helped them carry a couple of heavy boxes. I stood in the doorway of the house and looked around. The place was still full of memories, faint echoes of birthday mornings, Christmas lights, bedtime stories. I had to wipe my nose twice, then gave up and just let the tears fall. Rob didn't say much. He had taken the kids to school that morning, so they weren't there to see this. I was grateful for that, at least. Consequences. That word rang in my head over and over. Months ago, Rob had said it. Your actions have consequences. I brushed it off then, thinking we'd get through it. Thinking I could do what I wanted and still come back to this life whenever I felt like it. But I was wrong. Family isn't a spare tire you come back to when you're done having fun. Stability isn't something you stash in the garage while you chase passion. And a husband, especially a good man, won't always be waiting. I thought I could juggle it. I thought I could sneak around and then slide back into normal like nothing happened. I ignored the damage I was doing until it was too late. I looked at Rob. I wanted to say something to try one last time. But before I could speak, he looked me dead in the eyes. "Goodbye, Laura. I hope you got what you wanted." Then he turned and pressed the garage door button. It closed slowly, quietly, just like the last chapter of a book. Nothing dramatic, just done. I figured sooner or later I'd find out what was really going on, and when I did, I'd deal with it. Whatever it was. That night, I tried to keep it together. I threw on jeans and a t-shirt, went downstairs, talked to the kids about school and their homework, and kept my focus on grilling burgers for dinner like everything was normal. But deep down, I wasn't done. Not even close. See, when I go to bed at night, I usually sleep naked. I know, maybe that's TMI, but honestly, it's more comfortable that way. I'm surprised more people don't do it. That said, since we've got 2 little kids in the house, Andy and Gracie, I keep a couple of pajama pants folded in the bottom drawer of my nightstand. You never know when they'll come bursting into the bedroom in the middle of the night. I've got a method. I can slide into those pants while still under the covers in one smooth motion. It's a system, efficient. That night, I got into bed and cracked open a book, trying to calm my thoughts before sleep. Laura was already in bed too. She usually wears one of my old t-shirts long enough to double as a nightgown. She likes to be a little more modest than me, she says, in case she has to make a midnight run to the bathroom or into the hallway. After a few minutes, I turned off the light, rolled toward her, and whispered our nightly ritual, "Good night." "I love you," she replied automatically. "Love you too," and shifted to get comfortable. Business as usual. But I didn't sleep much that night. Honestly, I didn't sleep well for days. Months later, I think back to that night as the moment when everything started to shift quietly, subtly, underneath the surface. Laura and I have a strong relationship. We really do. But in rare, quiet moments when I'm driving alone, or in the shower, or running at sunrise, I think about that morning. The damn box. I've tried to let it go. I really have. But the image, the weight of it, it's still lodged somewhere in my brain like a splinter I can't quite get out. I went online. I searched through every article, every Reddit thread, every signs your spouse is cheating list that the internet could throw at me. And you know what? Laura didn't match any of them. Not a single one. She hadn't changed anything, her patterns, her behavior, her intimacy with me. Not even a hiccup. By every available metric, my wife was not cheating. And yet, I couldn't shake it. Maybe it's because I'm a man. Maybe it's because I'm a husband. Maybe it's just how we're wired. I don't know. But the doubt that microscopic poisonous seed was still there. And it wouldn't go away. You know how you get a song stuck in your head that loops and loops and won't let go? They call it an earworm. Well, this wasn't a song. This was a thought, a possibility. And it dug in deep. I started running more. Longer routes, faster times. I stayed in the shower longer too, like hot water could steam it out of me. My emotions tightened up, and I didn't even realize it at first. I felt anger, but I didn't know where to direct it. I wanted to do something. But what? Who was I even angry at? I didn't want to become paranoid. I didn't want to snoop or accuse or ruin something good based on a hunch. But I also couldn't just let it go. Months turned into a year. Life kept moving forward. We were all a year older. I got a small promotion at work, 20% raise, better bonus structure. The kids moved up a grade, started new activities. Laura stayed in the same job, picked up a few more hours. On paper, everything was great. Solid finances, healthy kids, date nights with Laura, sex 2 or 3 times a week. We were fine. No, better than fine. We were happy. And yet, that thought, that image, that box, still there, faintly echoing in the back of my mind like a ghost I couldn't exorcise. Less frequent, sure, less intense, but not gone. I know that someday I'll have to do something about it, but not now. Not while the kids are young, not while things are good. For now, I'll hold steady, keep running, keep pretending. Keep living this version of life and hoping that one day, that damn earworm will finally fade away for good. I kept myself on track as best I could. If Laura ever decided to leave, I'd do everything I could to make sure the kids stayed with me. That much I was sure of. But when the thought crossed my mind, if she did want out, she'd lose more than just the marriage. A few more months passed, and that damn thought the earworm finally got the better of me. I couldn't take the quiet uncertainty anymore, so I called a private investigator. I made an appointment and showed up at their office, expecting to meet some retired cop in a wrinkled suit who drank too much coffee and had a nicotine-stained voice. What I got instead was someone who looked like she walked off the set of a primetime crime show. No older than 35. Stunning, confident, definitely not what I expected. My own biases kicked in, I'll admit it. I wasn't sure someone like her could help me. But within 5 minutes of sitting in her office, I understood she was sharp enough to make me feel like the amateur in the room. We talked for a while about what I was hoping to find out. She asked questions. I gave her everything. Where Laura worked, her schedule, her car details, her phone number, a recent photo from my camera roll. She took notes calmly, professionally. I left a deposit, and she told me she'd call in a week with an update. Walking out of her office, I had no idea if I'd done the right thing. Would knowing the truth bring me peace or just more pain? If Laura was cheating, could I live with that? Could I push it down and just move on for the sake of the kids? The answer didn't come easy, and honestly, I still didn't have one. 2 weeks later, she called. She said she had a preliminary report and wanted to go over it in person. Her voice was calm but serious. I knew immediately this wasn't good news. I sat in her office again, and this time, she offered me a bottle of water. I took it, opened it, drank. She took a breath and began. "Your wife is involved with someone," she said. "His name is Trayvon Williams. He's a bit younger than her. Single." She slid a photograph across the desk. There they were, Laura and Trayvon, holding hands. I froze. I heard her say something about his age, maybe 25. Fit, attractive, black. Not just casually black, she explained, but with mixed family features, maybe a white parent or grandparent. I don't even remember the rest of what she said. My vision tunneled. Everything else faded out. The photo, that image, it sat in front of me like a hammer waiting to drop. "Mr. Brady?" she asked. I didn't respond. "Mr. Brady, are you okay?" I still didn't respond. She pushed the trash can toward me, and my body did what my brain couldn't stop. I vomited. Everything I'd eaten, everything I'd bottled up, came spilling out. After it was over, I sat back down in the chair and just stared at the table. The realization finally hit. Laura was cheating on me. When I was able to stand again, I dragged myself out of her office and back to mine. I closed the door and just sat there, not thinking, not planning, just existing. Miss Wolfenstein had mentioned her husband was a lawyer who handled divorce cases. She handed me his card on my way out, said he could help if I wanted to talk through my options. A few hours later, he called. Jordan Walters. Local guy, looked sharp online, seemed to win for his clients. I made an appointment. An hour with him taught me one thing. If I went after Laura through the New York State family courts, I'd lose. Not the case, not the house, the kids. He was blunt. The courts here assume the mother is the better parent. It's an outdated, deeply rooted bias. Even if you prove infidelity, it won't matter unless the kids are in direct danger. You'll pay child support, spousal support, and probably lose primary custody. I sat there stunned. All the years I'd worked, all the time I spent with the kids, none of it would matter. I left his office feeling like the floor had been yanked out from under me. I wasn't just hurt now, I was trapped. I get it. Family courts often deal with dads trying to skip out on support payments. And sure, they need to protect kids from that. But what about the fathers who do want to be responsible, who are willing and capable? Why does the system seem blind to that? Mothers aren't always the saints they're assumed to be. Some women should never have become moms in the first place, and in those cases, the father is often the more stable, logical choice. It's even worse when neither parent is fit then. The kids get shuffled off to grandparents or into foster care. That's the part that really makes my stomach turn. What shocked me most was the advice Jordan gave me. I still can't believe it. We had a long talk about what I valued in my marriage to Laura and what mattered most to me when it came to the kids. Then I laid it out for him. I wanted a divorce, clean and simple. I wanted her out of the house, nowhere near me or the kids. I wanted to keep the house, get full custody, and maybe even have her pay child support. Jordan looked at me like I'd grown a second head. His face said it all. Get real. Turns out, my expectations were a little too, let's say, optimistic. Apparently, in New York State, being the faithful spouse doesn't win you any medals. In fact, courts tend to look at custody and support like math problems, not morality tests. Even if Laura cheated, even if I did everything right, the system might still leave me paying for it literally. I left Jordan's office reeling. I walked partway back to work, then ducked into a Starbucks and sat by the window with a coffee, watching strangers pass by like they had no idea what kind of life bomb had just gone off in mine. Jordan had apologized for what he told me, said he hated giving that kind of advice. But he'd seen too many guys lose everything by reacting too fast, doing something reckless in a burst of anger, and then regretting it for the rest of their lives. His advice? 2 things. 1. Don't do anything stupid. 2. Don't do anything yet. The first part, I could handle. No matter how much I wanted to confront this Trayvon guy and knock him into next week, I wasn't going to do it. That's not who I am. Besides, if I ended up with a criminal record, any chance of getting custody would vanish. My career could tank. My life could implode. But that second part, do nothing, that was a hell of a lot harder. Should I just sit there, watch Laura enjoy her little romance, and act like nothing's wrong? Should I wait, keep playing the loving husband, while she sneaks around with someone 10 years younger? I wanted her gone. I wanted to throw her stuff in the yard and change the locks. I wanted there to be consequences. But Jordan's warning echoed in my head. This is a long game. If you want to win, you need to play smart. Be patient. So I tried. I walked through the door that evening with my mouth shut and my eyes wide open. Everything looked normal. Laura was cooking, the kids were busy being kids, and it was like nothing had changed. But something had. I had. I didn't say much. I changed clothes, grabbed a beer from the fridge. Laura looked over and said, "Don't go too crazy, we've got football tonight." I stared at the unopened beer in my hand. Then I put it back. We had dinner, piled into the car, and went to the game. Just another Friday night. The next week passed in a fog. Then Friday came again, right on schedule. I got home around 5. The kids were in the living room, zoned out in front of the television. Laura was at the kitchen table in her work clothes, a glass of wine beside her and the glow of her tablet lighting up her face. She looked up as I came in and said, "You're home. Good. Grab a drink and sit with me." That was unusual. We didn't do this. Not on a random Friday. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Something was off. Maybe it was nothing, but maybe finally it was something. I was done waiting. It was time to find out. "I'll go change first, then grab a beer. I'll be right back," I said, casually too casually. Maybe. Laura nodded and returned her gaze to the tablet, but something about the way her fingers hovered over the screen, still and stiff, made it obvious she was watching me more closely than usual. In the bedroom, I peeled off my work clothes like armor after a long battle tie loosened, shirt unbuttoned, pants folded across the back of the chair. I threw on a pair of jeans and my favorite long-sleeve tee, the one with the faded print from a concert years ago. A part of me wanted to stall, to delay whatever the hell this was turning into. But another part, the louder, sharper part, needed answers. In the garage, I grabbed one of my favorite IPAs from the mini fridge and poured it into a tall glass, just the way I liked it. Cold, bubbly, bitter. I let the foam settle before walking slowly back to the kitchen. My stomach was tight, and I could feel the faint twitch in my jaw, the same one that came every time I was about to do something difficult. I pulled out a chair across from her and sat down. "So," I said, calm as I could manage, "what's on your mind, Laura?" She didn't flinch. She didn't look surprised. She didn't even pause for breath. "Oh, God," she said, almost whispering but not really hiding anything. "When I'm with Trey, I lose control. I need him, Rob. But I try to keep that in perspective." She didn't look at me. She stared straight ahead, somewhere just past my left shoulder. I followed her gaze, but there was nothing there but a blank wall. "My family comes first," she continued, her voice steady but low. "The kids. You. I try to make sure those needs don't overlap with my needs for Trey. At least, that's my intention. I work hard to keep those two parts of my life as far apart as possible." She paused, maybe expecting a reaction, maybe just thinking about her next words. I gave her nothing. "There's always a risk," she said. "I know that. I knew it from the start. That's why I only see him during the day, at his apartment. We work at the same bank, but we don't talk there. We don't text. We don't email. Nothing." I clenched my jaw but stayed still. "There was a slip-up. A year ago." She finally looked at me. "You found that box in my purse. You remember?" I nodded once. She didn't wait for more. "When I saw you holding it, I almost blacked out. But you didn't ask, and I said something about grilling dinner. Then I gave a similar box to one of the women at the office the next day, just in case. Told her it was a joke gift for her new boyfriend, which was partly true. Then I took the original one back to Trey's apartment." I stared at my beer. It didn't taste the same anymore. "Trey's 6'3", lean, swimmer's build, abs, smart, educated, polite, confident. He comes from a good family. He makes me feel—" She didn't finish that sentence. She didn't need to. "I know what you're thinking," she said. "You, Rob, the kids, you're my real life. He's just—" She trailed off again, and the silence filled in the blanks. Later that night, while lying in bed staring at the ceiling, I started planning. Jordan had warned me, be smart, be prepared. So I began to quietly, methodically lay the groundwork for what might come, just in case. Step 1. Secure the kids' future. I met with a financial advisor and, with his help, set up trust accounts for Andy and Gracie, accounts only I could access. The money was earmarked for their education, and it was invested conservatively blue chip stocks and government bonds. Dividends would be reinvested, compounding over time. Step 2. Limit the financial exposure. I reduced the credit limit on our joint card, telling Laura it was for fraud protection. She didn't blink, of course she agreed. She's a banker, after all. Step 3. Take inventory. I told her I was shopping for better insurance, which required a list of all the valuables in the house. She bought it. The goal wasn't revenge. I wasn't trying to hurt her, but I was going to protect myself and the kids. I had no illusions. Divorce is hell, even when you try to be civil. I knew that. Jordan had confirmed it. And still, through all of this, Laura continued to live her double life. I heard her once on the phone, whispering in the garage while pretending to look for something in the trunk. "Trey wants me to spend the weekend with him," she said. "How can I make it work?" She thought I couldn't hear her. She was wrong. I took another sip of my now warm beer, leaned back in my chair, and stared at the woman across from me, the woman I had built a life with, the woman who was slipping away in plain sight. And I started thinking, not about how to save our marriage, but about how to survive its end. I need to come up with some kind of story for Rob, Laura typed into her notes app while sitting at her desk, eyes drifting from her tablet screen to the backyard beyond the window. But what could it be? She'd been turning this over in her head all week. The weekend was coming up fast, and Trey had made it clear he wanted more from her, not just the occasional midday rendezvous, not just the secret texts. He wanted time, real time, an overnight weekend with friends, where she'd show up on his arm and play the part of his girlfriend in public. Laura exhaled, tapping her fingers on the table. Nothing made sense. Her family all lived within a 10-minute radius. She couldn't claim she needed to go visit her mother. Her job wouldn't work either. She was a banker, not a marketing exec with spontaneous retreats or Saturday networking. None of her coworkers traveled for meetings. As for her friends, they were mostly mutual friends with Rob. Eventually, someone would say something. They always did. That was the problem with secrets. They didn't stay buried long when too many people knew them. I told Trey we should stick to lunch breaks, she muttered under her breath, rereading one of the texts he'd sent earlier. He had pushed back, saying he couldn't keep doing this, seeing her for stolen moments, pretending she was just a fun distraction. I need more than that, he had written. If you can't give me time, then maybe this isn't what I thought it was. The threat hung in her mind. She liked him. A lot. The sex was electric better than with Rob. Not just physically, but emotionally. Trey made her feel alive in ways her marriage didn't anymore. And while she didn't want to leave Rob or their kids, she couldn't deny the thrill she felt with Trey. A few weeks ago, she had considered coming clean to Rob. She was ready to tell him she needed space, maybe even a break, to think. But in the end, fear took over. She had backed off. She had too much to lose. But now, Trey was forcing her hand. She closed her notes app and sighed, rubbing her temples. I'll come up with something. I have to. Thursday evening, Rob pulled into the driveway, exhausted from work but mentally prepared for whatever Laura had to say. She was sitting at the dining table, glass of wine in hand, staring at her tablet like it was a portal to another universe. He walked in, loosened his tie, and gave her a nod. Rob, honey, she said softly, why don't you grab a beer? I want to talk to you about something. Something important. Damn it. He knew what this was. He forced a smile and said, I'll change first, then I'll join you. In the bedroom, he took his time, peeled off his suit, stepped into the shower, let the hot water run over him while his mind spun through every possible thing she could be about to say. His instincts were screaming now this wasn't going to be small talk. When he returned to the kitchen, he poured one of his favorite IPAs into a clean glass, letting it foam and settle before sitting down across from her. He noticed her hands trembling ever so slightly as she raised her wine. So, he said, steadying his voice, what's on your mind? She looked down. Honey, I want to talk about something that may upset you. But I want you to know, first of all, that I love you very much. His brow furrowed. Why do you need to remind me of that now, Laura? Sounds like you're about to say something that'll make me doubt it. She flinched, as if he'd slapped her with his words. But she continued. A friend asked me to go to an event with him, she said carefully. I told him I would. It's just dinner. He's meeting some of his college friends and didn't want to go alone. Everyone else will be with their partners, and he didn't want to be the odd one out. Rob tilted his head slightly. Okay, so let me get this straight. A grown man couldn't find a date, and so he turned to a married woman to be his plus one? He's really sweet, she said quickly, and kind of shy. I think he just didn't want to feel out of place. It's nothing romantic. I just thought I'd do something nice for a friend. Rob took a slow sip of his beer. Let's try this again. A sweet, shy man who just happens to be younger than you, who knows you're married, asked you to pretend to be his girlfriend for an entire evening? He set his glass down harder than he meant to. Laura, do you even hear how ridiculous this sounds? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Rob stared at her. You're not telling me everything, and I think you know that. She didn't deny it, just lowered her gaze and stayed silent. And right then, Rob knew Whatever this was, whatever this event was, it wasn't just dinner. The show was on, and it was Laura's turn to decide what role she was going to play next. I understand this correctly, I said, locking eyes with her. He's not exactly your boyfriend, just a friend. Laura hesitated. Right, just a friend. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Come on, Laura. He's showing up to a party with a beautiful woman on his arm, and he's just going to introduce you as a friend? Let's be real here. She dropped her gaze, staring at the half-empty glass of wine in front of her. I didn't stop. Do you remember when we started dating? You couldn't wait to tell people. I mean, you even called your mom to say it was official. You were giddy. You two were on the phone for like an hour while I was sitting on the couch next to you, half listening. You don't do that with just a friend. I took a slow sip of my beer. And let's talk about Trayvon. Does he think you're just a friend? When he introduces you to his friends this weekend, what do you think he'll say? Hey everyone, this is Laura. She's married, but we hang out in hotel rooms sometimes. No biggie. Maybe we should call him and clear it up. Her head snapped up. The moment I said Trayvon's name, I saw it on her face, pure panic. The expression of someone caught completely off guard. She blinked at me, wide-eyed, her lips slightly parted, like she was trying to catch up to the moment. Come on, Laura, I said, my voice quieter now, more direct. You and Trayvon have been seeing each other for a while. He's just trying to make it official, now introduce you to his friends. He wants to show you off. How do you know about him? She asked, her voice small, not even defensive, just stunned. I ignored the question. I want you to understand something. After this weekend, after your little date with your boyfriend, there are going to be consequences. You might be pretending this is just dinner, but we both know what's really happening. I'm not his girlfriend, she whispered. Oh, really? I said, almost laughing. You and Trayvon Williams have been having a full-blown affair for nearly 2 years, and now you're suddenly saying you're not his girlfriend? Please, be honest for once. She fell silent, the kind of silence that confirms the worst. When exactly is this dinner? I asked. When does the event with your not boyfriend begin? Friday night, she replied slowly, like she was picking the words one by one. It's just dinner. Him and his friends. Uh-huh. And are you coming home Friday night after dinner? I leaned back in my chair, watching her flinch before she spoke. I was thinking about staying with him, overnight. Well, at least you're honest now, I said, setting my beer down harder than I intended. But let me be clear. This changes everything. You may not realize it yet, but it does. Laura, this is the 21st century, and sure, some people think marriage fidelity is outdated. But not me. I don't own you, and I can't tell you what to do. But I expected more. I expected truth. And you've been lying. She opened her mouth, maybe to justify it, maybe to apologize. I held up a hand to stop her. If you don't want to be married to me anymore, then say it. Have the guts to end it like a grown-up. Don't sneak around behind my back while pretending we're still a family. Her eyes filled with tears. I love you, Rob. I do. This thing with Trey, it's just something I need right now. I don't expect it to last. I want to keep our life, too. When it's over, we'll be fine again. Like always. Wow, I said, shaking my head. You're really good at lying to yourself, aren't you? I stood, picked up my glass, and carried it to the sink. Go be with Trey if that's what you want. But don't think I won't be making changes. As I walked away from the table, she just stared at me, silent. Friday morning, there was a small overnight bag next to the front door with Laura's name on it. She hadn't said anything. She just left it there like it was normal. I walked into the kitchen. The kids were at the island, eating cereal, chattering about school. Laura was sipping coffee like it was just another morning. I poured a cup of coffee for myself and sat beside the kids. When are you coming back? I asked her flatly. She looked down. Probably noon. Sunday. Wow. So Friday night dinner is now a full weekend getaway. I glanced at the kids. Let's get ready. I'll take you to school today. Mom won't be around, so I'll be picking you up later too. Both kids looked at Laura, confused. Where are you going, Mom? Gracie asked. Laura didn't respond. She just smiled weakly and sipped her coffee. We left. Laura's journal, later that morning. I've got butterflies in my stomach. What have I done? I think I might be making a mistake. But God, Trey is amazing. He makes me feel like I'm the only woman in the world. Rob is great, solid, dependable, loving, but Trey is magnetic. I want him. I need him. But Rob's words keep echoing in my head. There will be consequences. And he meant it. I saw it in his eyes. I don't know what's coming next. I just hope I can survive it. I wasn't exactly sure what Trey meant when he told me Rob couldn't do anything. He said, if your husband tries to push you out or divorce you, he'll end up the loser. He'll be the one paying, not you. And I believed him. If Rob files for divorce, I'll get the kids. I'll get the house. He'll be on the hook for child support and maybe even alimony for years, probably until Andy and Gracie graduate college. Rob loves our kids more than anything. He won't want to be away from them. That means he'll tolerate whatever I do because he has no real choice. At least, that's what I told myself. Meanwhile, Rob called Jordan, my lawyer, and brought him up to speed. I told him exactly what was happening and how it was all going down. He listened carefully, and in his calm, deliberate voice, reminded me again, stay the course. Don't act on emotion. Think long term. This was only one skirmish in what could turn into a very long war. And I listened, because I've already started making my moves. So while my wife was off playing girlfriend to her 25-year-old lover, I took action. That Friday night, after tucking in the kids and making sure they were settled, I walked into our bedroom with a sense of finality. I opened the closet, pulled out Laura's things, and began moving them to the guest room. The guest room has its own bathroom, so she wouldn't be slumming it, but she wasn't going to share a bed with me anymore. Not after what she was doing. That little fantasy weekend with her boyfriend was the final straw. No more compromises. No more excuses. Andy and Gracie caught me in the middle of it. Why are you moving Mom's stuff? They asked, confused and wide-eyed. You can talk to your mom when she gets back, I said, keeping my voice level. She'll explain everything to you. They were too young to understand betrayal, too innocent to grasp what cheating meant or how it poisons everything it touches. Hell, I wasn't even sure Laura understood the damage she'd caused. Laura's Friday started with tension in the air, so thick it could have snapped. Rob barely said a word to me. He was quiet, distant, knew something. I was sure of it. Still, I packed my overnight bag. It was my first full weekend with Trey. I know what I told Rob, that it was just dinner, but that was a lie. I wasn't coming home until Sunday afternoon. And I guess, deep down, I knew that changed everything. I felt nervous. All day, Trey kept showing up at my office, grinning like a child counting down the minutes to Christmas morning, and I smiled back. He was excited, and maybe that excitement rubbed off on me. After work, I went to his apartment. It was close to the bank. I told him I needed to shower, get ready. I poured a glass of wine to settle my nerves. This was real now. No more secrets, no more half-truths. I was going on a public date with a younger man who was not my husband, a man I had been sleeping with for nearly 2 years. I hesitated for a second, maybe this was going too far, but then I looked at Trey, how he smiled, how he looked at me like I was the center of the universe. God help me. I wanted to feel that way. I put on my black dress, the one that always made me feel confident, matched it with heels and pulled my hair into a loose bun. I wore the jewelry Rob gave me when Gracie was born. How twisted is that? I love those pieces. Even now, they make me feel strong. We went to a nice restaurant, something upscale. Trey had reserved a private room for his friends, young, vibrant people, most of them around his age, 25. The women glanced at me, clearly sizing me up. I didn't care. I knew what they were thinking. I wasn't one of them. But Trey made it clear who he was with, and they understood. Dinner was full of laughter and wine. A few drinks in, and I stopped caring about what anyone thought. That's when one of Trey's friends walked up to me. His name was Jacob Tull, fit, the kind of guy who spends every weekend at the gym. "So," he said with a grin, "Trey tells me you two are together." I blinked. "What do you mean together?" He laughed. "You know, together. Been seeing each other for a while now, right?" I played dumb. "We've worked together for a few years." Maybe that's what he meant. Jacob leaned in a little, his smile still fixed on his face. No, I mean like, sleeping together. That's what I meant." I stared him dead in the eye, leaned closer, and lowered my voice. "Whatever happens between Trey and me is none of your business." His grin faltered. He straightened up. "I mean, it's probably your husband's business, isn't it?" And then he turned and walked away. I stood there for a second, stunned. Trey had told his friends. About me, about us. Apparently, I wasn't just his little secret anymore. Was I really stupid enough to believe Trey wouldn't tell anyone? I mean, I thought what we had was private, just our little secret. But now I knew I was wrong. I felt cheap and exposed. I sat back down, suddenly not so excited to be out with his friends. Trey came up to me, grinning like nothing had happened. "Hey, we're heading to my buddy's place," he said. "He's got a hot tub. You in?" It was late, almost 1 a.m., and I was exhausted. I probably should have gone home, but instead, I nodded. I'd already crossed so many lines. What was one more? We got to the place, and I quickly realized no one brought swimsuits. It was clear that hot tub meant naked hot tub. At first, I hesitated, but the wine, the attention, the thrill, I gave in. When I woke up Saturday morning, it was almost noon. My head was pounding, my body ached, and Trey was snoring beside me like a chainsaw. I dragged myself to the bathroom, took a leak, then rummaged for a toothbrush to wash away the taste of last night's alcohol and regret. Found some ibuprofen and took 3. We went out for brunch, but I was sluggish, my nerves on edge. The night had been too long, and I was suddenly afraid we'd run into someone I knew, a neighbor, a coworker. God forbid, one of Rob's friends. But the fear didn't last long. It faded once we got back to his apartment. Then it was back to the bedroom. Sex. Sleep. Wake. Repeat. More sex. Sunday morning came. I got up around 10, and Trey handed me a bagel and coffee. I packed up my little overnight bag. I told myself I needed to get home, reset, pretend none of this happened. Meanwhile, Rami husband, the man I had been married to for nearly 10 years, had made his own weekend plans. After taking Andy to soccer practice, he packed a cooler with sandwiches, snacks, water, and his Nikon camera. He took Andy and Gracie on a long hike, just the 3 of them. They hiked out to an overlook, the kind of spot that makes you feel like the world is bigger than your problems. Along the way, Gracie asked, "Where's Mom?" Rob paused. He didn't want to lie. "She's helping a friend this weekend," he said carefully. "When's she coming back?" she asked. "Probably today. If she's not back when we get home, you can call her." And that was that. Gracie accepted it. Rob tried not to think about what I was doing. When I got home around 2 p.m., the house was empty. It was eerily quiet. I walked into our bedroom and stopped cold. Something felt off. The closet. I opened it and all of my clothes were gone. Panic started to rise. I checked the bathroom. My makeup bag, toothbrush, hairdryer gone. I rushed into the kids' rooms. Nothing had changed there. Finally, I opened the guest room door. There, in the closet, were my clothes, and on the bed sat a box with all my toiletries. My heart sank. I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to figure out what to do. Rob must have moved everything. He was sending a message loud and clear. But it made no sense to me. I wanted to yell at him that Trey had nothing to do with our marriage, that he was a completely separate thing. Why couldn't Rob understand that? I decided to move everything back. I didn't want to make a scene in front of the kids. Just as I finished around dinner time, I heard the front door open. The kids came in, chatting and laughing. They hugged me and told me about their amazing hike, about the photos they took with Rob's Nikon, about the cheeseburgers they got after. Then Rob walked in. He looked right at me, but it was like I didn't exist. He didn't say a word, just opened the fridge, took out ingredients, and started making dinner. I tried to speak to him in private. "I saw what you did with my things," I said quietly. "I put everything back in place." He didn't even look at me. "Wonderful," he said, cold and clipped. "It was just one weekend," I said, trying to sound calm. "One weekend in our whole lives." He turned then, really looked at me. His eyes were colder than I'd ever seen them. "When are you going to see him again?" he asked, lowering his voice so the kids wouldn't hear. "What do you mean?" "I mean, when are you going to sleep with him again?" I couldn't answer. Not right away. He turned his back to me. "That's what I thought. Get out of my face. I'll feed the kids." I walked back to the bedroom and started putting things away. A few minutes later, Gracie walked in and looked at me, confused. "Mom, where were you all weekend?" I wasn't ready for that question. Not at all.